howdy Iron Horse fans. Welcome to the Iron Horse Roundup. In this episode, we will be exploring the Heartlands Railroad Museum of Carona, Kansas, followed by a special non-railroad treat at the very end. This is the 5th railroad museum that Robert and I visited during our travels. After the Museum of the American Railroad in Frisco, Texas, the Oklahoma Railway Museum in Oklahoma City, the Trolley Museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and the Railroad Museum of Oklahoma in Enid, Oklahoma. The Railroad Museum contains many historical artifacts of Midwest railroading, such as speeders, a rail bike known as a velocipede, stoves and mock-ups of ticket booths, railroad plates that you hang on the wall, kind of like in my grandparents' house, and even wooden models of famous locomotives. As with the other railroad museums with only one steam locomotive, let us start with my favorite museum piece here, which, yes, it's a steam locomotive. And not just any steam locomotive, but the last surviving Kansas City Southern steam locomotive, KCS 1023. Built in 1906 as a 280 consolidation type number 488 for the Kansas City Southern Railroad by the American Locomotive Company, also known as ALCO, of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was used in freight service over the hilly Ozark terrain until larger locomotives replaced it. It was then rebuilt in the Kansas City shops to an 080 switcher locomotive in 1925. After being used in many locations like Pittsburgh, Kansas, Kansas City, and Shreveport, Louisiana, it was retired in 1955 and donated to a park in Pittsburgh, Kansas, until it was donated to the Railroad Museum here in December of 2011. As I have mentioned before, she is the last Kansas City Southern steam locomotive in existence, and I must say it is always good to see a piece of history from that railroad, or any railroad, preserved, especially if it is the last steam locomotive of that particular railroad. There are also a couple of railroad depots on the property, like this one based here in Carona, Kansas, and this one based out of Boston, Missouri. Yeah, not Massachusetts, but Missouri. Before we get to the diesel locomotives, let's take a look at the rest of the equipment and rolling stock they have here, like these switch stands, a speeder in its shed, a semaphore signal of the Carona depot, an assortment of different types of railroad crossings, lots of cabooses, including the fanciest caboose I've ever seen in my life. Yes, even fancier than the motel cabooses. A really nice business car. And much more. While exploring the museum, a high rail truck for the short line that passes through came by. Here's the mechanism for how the door of the freight part of the depot was opened. They also have a model train display on HO scale, which happened to be running the same steam locomotive that's displayed outside, as well as a model of the passenger excursion that sometimes operates at this museum. Now on to the diesel engines of the museum. And now for the non-railroad related treat I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. A trip to this remote corner of Kansas is never complete without visiting Big Brutus. Built in 1963, weighing 4,200 tons with a height of 160 feet from the tip to the bottom. After the fabrication was completed in May of 1963, it was shipped on 150 railroad cars, actually, to be assembled in Kansas, where it operated until 1974 and was used for a coal mine. You can tell by its smaller cousin how just gigantic this juggernaut of a machine is. It is definitely worth the visit to this remote corner of Kansas if you are visiting the Heartlands Railroad Museum or any other places nearby. Well, that does it for the episode on the Heart of the Heartlands Railroad Museum of Carona, Kansas. In the next museum, we will be exploring the Oklahoma Railway Historical Association at the Route 66 Village in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Frisco 4500 is on display. Until then, may your lights be green on the high iron.